What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson, and the NFL Draft has officially concluded. The New York Giants, we did the full breakdown on their draft class yesterday, talking about what we liked, what maybe we didn't like as much. I think we both settled in at about a B for the draft class grade, but we do want to talk about what this draft class means for this team, and in particular, what does it mean for quarterback Daniel Jones? Now, we've had a lot of conversations about Daniel Jones throughout the offseason. His future is still murky. Even though this NFL draft just happened, the Giants didn't land the quarterback. We know that they tried to. They tried very hard to trade up to the number 3 overall pick and land Drake May. Instead, they go ahead, take Malik Neighbors at number 6, build out this roster. So now Daniel Jones entering a crucial 6th season in his career as the New York Giants starting quarterback. What's going to happen? Well, we kind of want to just unpack that, discuss what this draft class means for him, how confident we are in Daniel Jones going forward, and all of that other good stuff. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And how are you feeling about Daniel Jones going into 2024?
I'm doing pretty good, and listen, Daniel Jones, this is kind of a nuanced conversation, obviously. The contract is ugly, the injury clause is ugly. Every reason for them to have moved on, but here we are, and we have Malik Neighbors, and I'm happy about that. So now we talk about Daniel Jones' role. What is really going on here? What happens at quarterback for the future? Well, the Giants said they expected Daniel Jones to be the starter, and basically it came down to they couldn't find another player to replace him. So now they feel as though, well, we got to stick with him for this upcoming season. They've already guaranteed him a lot of money. We might as well just use him as a bridge. Of course, you risk the injury situation, but it's possible that Drew Lock starts the year. It's possible Drew Lock beats him out in camp. Who knows? Anything could happen. I doubt it. But Daniel Jones coming off the ACL tear, it seems as though they wanted to give him a top WR1 if they couldn't get Drake May, and they did just that. So we kind of look at the future now and ask what happens next. Next year's draft class, it is objectively worse than this year's, but there are always guys that rise to the occasion. There's always guys that blossom and become exciting prospects, and the Giants may have an opportunity next year to find their guy. There's always options in terms of veterans and stuff like that. So maybe they go in a different direction in terms of trading for a proven commodity. For what it's worth, the Buffalo Bills are going to probably suck next year. Josh Allen, amazing player. He has no receivers. Like, they traded Stephon Diggs. Gabe Davis is gone. And their top gun now is Keon Coleman, who's a rookie. I just don't know how they're going to compete, to be quite honest with you, with their offensive weapons, what they have available, unless they go out and acquire a Brandon Ayuk, which could happen. Maybe they want to go and get him and pay him. They could try to give him, Josh Allen, that WR1 he desperately needs. So I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to make a push for a WR1 right now this offseason, because right at the current juncture, they're about to just waste away a prime year of Josh Allen, right? If they do that, and Josh Allen's like, well, you gave me nothing, I want to be traded, I mean, the natural progression would be to the Giants. That's total hypothetical. No idea if that will ever happen. It's so unlikely, but you never know. It happens all the time where players get disgruntled, they force their way out, teams just realize they're not in a position to succeed, and they move off of players. It happens. We'll see what happens in the future. The Giants clearly have some questions that need answering, but they're giving Daniel Jones a better offensive line objectively. John Runyon, better left guard than anything we've had over the most recent 5 years. He's a above average pass protector, which is what we needed. Jermaine Illuminor, good right tackle. He can play right guard as well. So, he should be a slightly above average player in that regard as well. Andrew Thomas, we know. John Michael Schmidt should be better. Right guard, we'll see what happens with Evan Neal. Obviously we'd like him to be starting games and develop a bit. So I think the offensive line will take a step forward. We have Devin Singletary, and now you have, Tyrone Tracy, who we really like. He's a really solid young player. He's 24 years old for a rookie, so not entirely really young, but still very dynamic in his play. You get Malik Neighbors. You still have Waller until he retires. You got Theo Johnson, Daniel Bellinger, Wandale, Darius Slayton, Jalen Hyatt. This Giants wide receiver group, in my opinion, went from one of the worst to a pretty good one overnight with the Malik Neighbors acquisition. So, when you're looking at the offense, there's no more excuses to me for Daniel Jones. I know people keep coming in my comments and Twitter saying, well, he hasn't had this, he hasn't had that. There is no more excuses for Daniel Jones. If he can't succeed with the weapons they've given him and a slightly improved, hopefully a majorly improved offensive line, if he does not have a great season, it is time to move on, because that contract will bite us in the butt long term if we don't take the out. So, looking at the situation at hand, Anthony, I know there's a lot left to prove. I'm not going to say that any group's going to be significantly better, guaranteed, because, it's the Giants. We just never know. And, we've gone down that path before to be disappointed, but they should be better. And Daniel Jones needs to elevate the players on this roster. Malik Neighbors should be a 1,000-yard receiver as a rookie, and it shouldn't even be a freaking question, okay? He should be 1,000-plus yards, at least 6 or 7 touchdowns, and it shouldn't even be a conversation. Daniel Jones needs to make that happen. If it does not happen, I mean, you write the story, man. You write the rest of the story. He has to be gone. It's up to him now. The ball is in Daniel Jones' court. He either rises to the occasion or he doesn't. So, Anthony, what are you feeling right now about the situation? Do you think that the Giants are done yet in terms of looking for that quarterback? What do you think the future looks like at that position? I'm definitely curious to get your take on it.
Well, I think they've exhausted all of their options for this offseason. They tried to get Drake May and they failed. The New England Patriots were not willing to trade down and forego the opportunity to draft Drake May themselves. So now they're going to go into this season, of course, with Daniel Jones as their starting quarterback. You mentioned Drew Lock. Drew Lock definitely has a chance to get some playing time at some point this year if Daniel Jones gets injured, or if Daniel Jones isn't playing well midway through the season, the New York Giants would be wise to bench him and start Drew Lock instead due to the injury clause in Daniel Jones' contract. If they feel like they have their answer midway through the year, they decide we don't want Daniel Jones to be the starter in 2025, then they need to pull him from the lineup, because if he gets injured and can't pass his physical the following offseason, then they're due, an extra $30 million that they have to hand him or something crazy like that in injury guarantees. It'll eat up pretty much all the cap space we have for the 2025 offseason if we want to make any roster construction moves. So if Daniel Jones is middling at any point this season and the Giants feel like they have their answer about their future at quarterback, they do have to take him from the lineup and just go with the other quarterback who's cheaper and won't cost them anything in the future. So that is one way that you can look at Daniel Jones' 2024 season. That's one outcome for him. There is also the possible outcome that the Giants did enough this time. They got him the WR1. They got him a tight end. Maybe Theo Johnson breaks out. Maybe Darren Waller comes back. They improved his offensive line. Maybe Dable calls plays this year, and that helps. Maybe Daniel Jones finally does have the breakout. I think Dable calling plays would be like that one thing that maybe could propel Jones into that breakout. We'll see if Dable ends up calling the plays, but it is something that he's discussed is a possibility for this upcoming season. But maybe Jones does have that breakout year. I don't know. It's year 6. It's very unlikely. The probability of a player having a 6th-year breakout or improving their play that drastically going into their 6th season, it's very unlikely, I know. But it is still possible. And because I am a Giants fan, I am going to hope that it happens and hope that Daniel Jones turns into the Danny Dimes and reaches the potential that we all saw for him at one point. But realistically, my real feelings towards the season for Daniel Jones, zero excuses. You guys already know I'm pretty much done with Daniel Jones as things stand right now. I'm going to be extra done with him if you guys try and pull up excuses for him and say the offensive line isn't good, there's not enough playmakers, the play calling. I don't care, guys. It's the 6th season, and this is the contract year for him. It's not, last year, 2 years ago, he had a contract year, but he signed that 4-year deal that was really a 2-year deal with a team option for 2 additional years. That means he's going into the 2nd season of that 2-year deal, meaning it's a contract year for him. Do the Giants pick up the other 2 seasons on Daniel Jones' contract? It's put up or shut up time for Daniel Jones once again. I don't know how he's had so many put up or shut up opportunities. He's rarely put up. He's shut up quite a bit, and now he's got one last time to put up or shut up. And I don't know. I'm not going to make any predictions, I guess, on what I think is going to happen this year, because I like to remain optimistic and hope that the New York Giants win some football games in 2024. But like I said, this is technically a contract year for Daniel Jones, considering the out in his contract after the season, considering the injury guarantee after the season. So he does have to perform this year, and if he doesn't, there are no excuses. The Giants will have their answer. They've done enough. They've got playmakers. Darius Slayton is a good wide receiver. Wan'Dale Robinson, a good wide receiver. Jalen Hyatt has potential to be a great wide receiver. Malik Neighbors should be a great wide receiver from day one. You've still got talent in your backfield now. I like Tyrone Tracy Jr., and I think Devin Singletary is a very solid starter. If C.J. Stroud could get a lot out of Devin Singletary last year in Houston, the Giants better be able to get a solid amount out of him this year, and if they can't, I think you can get your answers on Daniel Jones from many different mediums here. If Slayton goes for 300 yards a season, or if Malik Neighbors only racks up 700 yards this season, you're going to have to point fingers somewhere. And I don't think you could just point fingers at every single skill position player and say they all stink. I think you have to look at who is feeding them the ball. So we'll get our answers on Daniel Jones this year. there is enough talent around him to finally evaluate his skill set and say whether or not he can maximize the skill set of others. The Giants have done that this offseason. They've put enough around him. So it really is a put up or shut up year for Daniel Jones. I think that the way that Joe Shane was maneuvering, trying to study all of the quarterbacks in this class, trying to move up for Drake May, it made it very clear and it sent a signal to Daniel Jones from Joe Shane that, hey, we are planning for your succession. Like, we are looking at options to succeed you. So right now, you have to give us a reason not to move on from you. And that's ultimately what the season is going to be for Daniel Jones. He's going to have to ball out and give the Giants every reason not to move on from him. It's going to be extremely difficult because the cards are stacked against him. You know, everything is pointing in the direction of Daniel Jones not having a good 2024 season. But if he does, if he shocks us, then I guess he'll stay on that contract to keep playing quarterback for the Giants. But one thing that you do have to keep in mind is that there's got to be some sort of a benchmark here, right? Alex, I'm curious to know your thoughts. How many touchdowns do you need to see from Daniel Jones this year? Do you have a yardage benchmark, a touchdown benchmark? For me, 15 touchdowns. I don't care if he adds 7 on the ground and he only has 22 in total with the weapons that the Giants have and how important it is for him to succeed this year. 22 total touchdowns, not enough. I think he needs to score at least 25 touchdowns. In fact, I would even push that up to 30 if you want to include his rushing touchdowns. I think it's going to be really difficult for Daniel Jones to prove that he's capable of being the starter long term. But what numbers do you have in your head, maybe, Alex, that tell you if he reaches this point, maybe I can view him as the potential starting quarterback for the long run?
Listen, the difficult part about this starts with his legs, right? A lot of his production, the reason that made him so effective in 2022 rather, when had his best campaign, was that he had over 700 rushing yards, right? If you eliminate those 700 rushing yards, Daniel Jones is one of the worst passing quarterbacks in the game. You know what I mean? Like that, and that's unfortunate to say, but if you eliminate his ability, his dual threat quality, he is an awful quarterback. You know what I mean? A lot of his production came because he was leveraging his legs to get out of situations, because he was missing open receivers, because he was bailing out of the pocket too early, because he was having happy feet. Bad offensive lines will do that to you. It's not all to blame, but his passing metrics don't encourage me in the slightest that he's going to be able to sit in the pocket after an ACL tear and throw the ball at a very high level and dominate opposing defenses, right? He is beaten up on some of the most horrific defenses we've seen in recent memory. The Minnesota Vikings defense in the playoff game was one of the worst defenses of all time. Okay, so and most quarterbacks would have beaten the crap out of them. The New Orleans Saints, that game, that might have been his best game against an average defense. But against good defenses, he's historically underperformed. And look, we can talk about how bad the offensive line is. We can talk about how bad the receivers are. We can talk about all these things. But there have been times when the pocket was clean, the receivers were open, and he completely missed them, right? And it happens all the time on the film, guys. Darius Slayton has been open more than I can even count, and he has missed him. Jalen Hyatt overthrows, underthrows. Last year, when he did have time in the pocket, he was completely missing his receivers. And I get that the offensive line, it makes you scared, it makes you wary, but great players find ways to make the plays when the opportunity arises, and Daniel Jones just never has done that. And look, I hope to God that he proves me wrong. I hope to God he emerges from the ashes like a phoenix and suddenly becomes great. But there's no data to support that's going to happen. Like I said, in 2022, he walked away with 3,642 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions with a 66.7% completion rate. If he ran those numbers back, and his rushing qualities have taken a big step because he had he's coming off an ACL tear, and then you have to make a decision. If he runs exactly those numbers back, how on earth are we going to sit here and convince ourselves that he's the future of this team? Right? 17 touchdown passes through the air. It's not sustainable. It's not. You can't win with this. Now, he hasn't had a WR1 like a lot of people have referenced. I wonder what he can do with Malik Neighbors. I just don't know if he's good enough to. I think that, look, you hear Tariq Woolen a couple years back when the Giants played him. You know what he said? He stares down his receivers. They had a pick 6 on the 5-yard line. He stares them down. If Daniel Jones is staring down Malik Neighbors every single play, he's gonna throw tons of interceptions. They're gonna have to get really creative with how they use him to get him open and make sure that they can Daniel Jones can get him the football without it being a liability every time. So I am curious to see how he fares without his rushing qualities, because the Giants cannot lean on him to run the same way that he did in 2022. I'd be surprised if he had half the running numbers if that he did back then. So, Daniel Jones, from a complete passing standpoint, Anthony, do you think he can survive this? Right? Because if you take his rushing numbers away and you look at his passing metrics, they have never been good. Even his rookie season, he was littered with bad pocket presence, bad this, bad that. Can you trust him to be a pure pocket passer and not lean on his legs to pick up the slack every time? In my opinion, there's no shot. There really is not. And if he surprises me, I'll be very happily sit here and I'll tell you, like, I was totally wrong. But we have 5 years of data to suggest that even when the pocket is clean, he's not that good. So, Anthony, when you're looking at the situation right now, if you take the rushing numbers out of the equation, how do you feel about it?
I mean, I don't feel good about it. I've made that clear throughout this offseason that I don't feel good about Daniel Jones going into 2024. I was pounding the table for a quarterback. I was hopeful that they would trade up and land Drake May. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So now, like I've said, it's really just about seeing if Daniel Jones can improve his play now that they put talent around him. They spent the number 6 overall pick on a wide receiver. That is not something that happens often. Teams don't just burn top 10 draft picks on wideouts. The Giants did that to make sure that Daniel Jones finally had an ultra-talented weapon to throw the ball to. He has that. Malik Neighbors is that. And you know what? Darius Slayton, he's also pretty good. I think so. And Wan'Dale Robinson was having a breakout last year after Daniel Jones left the lineup. And there's other players. Jalen Hyatt, he's due for a breakout. There is talent around Daniel Jones right now. Yes, we can have the conversation about the offensive line. It's better on paper. We'll see if it performs better next season. But you can also take a look at other advanced metrics that'll tell you Daniel Jones sacked himself quite a few times last season. The Giants were a bad offensive line for sure. The pass protection unit was terrible, and they surrendered a lot of sacks up front. But there were also statistics and numbers, and just watch the games. Daniel Jones ran into pressure quite a bit. He sacked himself more than once through those first 6 games that he played in that season, and he's done that a lot throughout his career. So we'll see how the offensive line performs. Of course, we do need to take into account the improvements to the skill position players. Daniel Jones has everything going for him right now. All of the keys, all of the things that he needs to succeed this upcoming season, he has been given by Joe Schoen this offseason. Now he just needs to actually put it together, perform well, and go into the season and play some good football. And that's going to be the big question mark. Can Daniel Jones do that? And how confident are we in him? Like I said, I'm not entirely confident, but because I'm a Giants fan, I'm rooting for him. I'm hoping that Daniel Jones proves me wrong. I'm hoping that he throws 40 touchdowns this year, rushes for 15. I would love to see that happen. But is it likely? I'm not so sure due to the nature of the way that he's played over the last several seasons. But we'll see, man. When you look at his career numbers, he had a career high in passing touchdowns in 2019. That's a long time ago. And it was 24 was his career high. Then it was 11, then it was 10, then it was 15. It's really tough to win in the NFL when your quarterback is only averaging about 12 touchdowns a season. That's really difficult to get by with in the modern passing league. So hopefully Daniel Jones is able to crack at least 20 passing touchdowns this year. That has to be the floor for him. He needs to put some points up. And it's actually crazy. I haven't looked at his stats year by year in a while, Alex. I cannot believe that he hasn't thrown for more than 20 touchdown passes other than just his rookie season. That's actually wild, but hopefully he does this year. If Daniel Jones throws for at least 20 this year, maybe rushes for 5. I don't know. We'll see. The knee injury is definitely going to be something that you have to factor in here and have even more caution towards him this upcoming season. I don't know how mobile Daniel Jones is going to be. I'm hoping that if he is returning from this injury, he's making a complete return and he's able to continue to use his legs as a weapon because he's been a very efficient runner throughout his career. If you look at his numbers, anytime that he's taken off with the football and designed runs, he's usually done quite well. He got his fumble numbers down. They were terrible in his rookie season. Of course, led the league with 19. Only had 7 fumbles in 2021, 6 in 2022. So really improved in that regard, but averaged about 400 yards per season on the ground. Even had 200 yards last season before he went injured in just 6 games with 40 attempts. But that 2022 season, he had a career-high 120 rushing attempts. And that was ultimately what unlocked Daniel Jones's play, I think. Just teams had to start scheming around his legs and preparing to match up against Daniel Jones's rushing ability. 120 rushing attempts that season. I think that if he's not able to do that anymore, it changes the Giants' offense and their dynamic. It takes away a really important factor in their offense. So hopefully Daniel Jones is able to use his legs this season, and if he is, then I could totally see him putting up some decent numbers. I think that even if you're talking about him rushing for a lot or not rushing for a lot, just the fact that he has his legs and he's mobile causes defenses to play him a little bit differently and game plan for him. So I think that is a really important factor. I'm hoping that he's healthy and that he's able to run quite a bit this upcoming season, Alex. But any closing thoughts on Daniel Jones and your expectations for him, what this all means for him? I will say, I think that the offensive line, the Giants didn't add any talent to it through the draft, but they added a lot in free agency. And if it could just be average this year, if it could just be average, I think it'll make a night and day difference on this Giants offense and hopefully lead to better play from Daniel Jones.
I think they're going to be a lot better. And the reason the Giants didn't draft any offensive linemen is because we had already spent so much capital on it in the draft, in the last two drafts. It's time to develop the players that we have. You can't just keep drafting players because the other guys aren't that good yet. You have to develop them. They signed 3 or 4 offensive linemen in free agency. One from the Bucks, obviously Runyon, and then Jermaine Illuminor, who are both going to be starters on day one. So, listen, this team is going to be a little bit better on offense. I believe we added substantial resources or assets to this equation. And Daniel Jones remains the quarterback. And coming off an ACL tear, I have very, very low expectations for him. If he blows them out of the water, that's the best case scenario. But also maybe the worst case scenario, because he did this to us in the past. He convinced us that there was some hope, and then it tanked, and then the perfect storm happened, and he got injured, and he wasn't good when he was playing the opening game. We need him to elevate everybody on the roster, right? At the entire offense, he needs to be the guy that steps in, and the offensive line has to play because he needs them to be, because he demands excellence. He needs to go in and demand excellence from his receivers and tight ends. That's what Tom Brady did. It wasn't because they were that good. It's because he stepped in and said, you do your freaking job. You do your freaking job and I'll do mine. Daniel Jones needs to speak, needs to be a leader, and nobody elevates their game around him. In fact, a lot of times they regress. So I need to see a lot more from him in that department. Outplaying expectations, showing up in big games, primetime competition. He needs to be the guy. We just haven't seen enough of it. He is horrible in primetime games. What does that mean to you? How many primetime games do we have to see of him struggling and playing poorly to figure out that he is just not good under the bright lights, right? And I know we have 5 years of sample size to suggest, and people are like, well, he hasn't had this, hasn't had that, this or whatever. Guys, how many excuses can we make for a player who, we watched CJ Stroud, half their offensive line went down last year. Tank Dell goes down. They go out and they still make the playoffs. You know what I mean? We need Daniel Jones to make everybody around him better. I want him to succeed. I want him to play better. I just have no reason to believe he's going to. So please, make me wrong. Make me eat my words. I am so happy to tell you in 7 months from now that Daniel Jones is much better than I thought he would be. I would love to do that. But I am tired of assuming that that's going to happen, of making excuses for players. Just like all of you guys say, let Evan Neal win the job. Let's let Daniel Jones win the job. Let's let him actually prove that he deserves to be where he is, that he deserves to be making $40+ million per season. I'm tired of handing out gifts to people, handing out jobs just because they've been paid, just because they, had a couple good games 3 freaking years ago. I'm tired of it. Let him earn it, for God's sakes. The excuses are endless with this guy. And I'm sorry, but it just is where we are right now. I'm out over the moon that we got Malik Neighbors. He should be a Giant for the next 10 years. And that, to me, is amazing because if Daniel Jones, if they move on from him in the future, Malik Neighbors and the rest of these guys will be right here waiting for the next quarterback. And they'll have that young quarterback, whoever it might be, will have a great situation to step into. So we'll see how the Giants operate. We'll see what happens. They made an active move. And people are like, well, Daniel Jones is the guys, they tried to replace him. They tried to go up and get Drake May. It is proven. It is factual. They tried to replace Daniel Jones because they know he's probably not the long-term quarterback. So, they couldn't get him. The Patriots were never moving out. They got the receiver instead. They're going to lock him in at a cheap price tag for the next 5 years, and you figure out the quarterback situation later on. Clearly, Joe Sheehan and Brian Dable have a very long leash. So we'll see. This roster is getting better. Now we have to figure out the last piece of the puzzle, which will happen hopefully over the next year or two. But that's kind of my wrap-up point. I'm sorry for getting very emotional. I'm exhausted, but, I thought we would replace him in this draft, and we didn't, and it remains a big problem for this team because he's never had a truly elite passing season over 5 years. I don't know what people think is going to happen that he's suddenly going to become a top 10 quarterback, but I hope you're freaking right if that's the side of the boat that you're on.
And we'll see. Stranger things have happened in the NFL. Maybe Daniel Jones has the breakout in year 6 and becomes an MVP candidate. I'm not so confident in it, but maybe some of you are. Let us know why down below in the comment section. I'm curious to hear any other thoughts and differing opinions about Daniel Jones for this upcoming season. It's going to be a long road for him, still recovering from that injury. We'll see when he's healthy. Hopefully he's good for training camp and ready to go. And I just can't wait to watch Malik Neighbors play. So whoever can get the ball in the hands of Malik Neighbors as accurately and as often as possible, that's who I want at quarterback. I just want to see Malik Neighbors turn into an absolute superstar. I'm a huge fan of his, and I'm really excited about our first round draft pick and really all of our draft picks. I thought we had a solid draft class in 2024. But that pretty much wraps this one up. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss the episode, comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you listen to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, catch you all on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.